and sober up by Monday morning in time to go back to work. His family was mistreated. He had 5 or 6 children. They'd be abused and beaten. And he'd go out Friday, he'd buy, for example, meat, steaks or something for himself. If anything was left over, his family could have it. And he was arrested this particular time for beating up his wife and breaking her arm, enough that she was sent to the hospital. He had done a lot of that sort of stuff before. He earned good money in those days, and the question is, what do you do with him? You send him to jail. You don't help the family by that. You don't help him, he probably loses his job, and you don't help the state. And I worked out a plan with the assistance of a probation officer to do something innovative. There was no authority for this. But what I did was sentence him to jail for, I don't remember how long, let's say 250 days, or I don't remember what the maximum was, but it may have been that. But to be served from Friday when he got through work till Monday morning when he went to work. And his payroll, his paycheck was picked up by the probation officer, who was also the social director here in Westport. And he would give him maybe $25 out of his pay for cigarettes or things during the week. And the rest of it, he'd give to their oldest daughter, who was about 15 or 16, and who spent the money for the family. And she really ran the family, this 15, 16-year-old high school kid. Without going into depth on it, it worked out terrifically. And finally he was out and went back with the family. I never heard after a few months. But one day, within the last 4 or 5 years, I was out in the parking lot near my office, and a lady came walking up to me. And she says, "Mr. Nevis," or Judge Nevis. You know, this is 40 years ago, 45 years ago. "Judge Nevis," she says, "I meant to call you and come up and see you many times, and I apologize for not doing it. I'm the 16-year-old daughter of Mr. Dooley." She said, "I can't tell you how grateful we are, because you made a family out of us." He says, "My father came back gradually as you arranged. We never had another problem in the family. The family went on. Our brothers are doing various things. We're all doing on. I've been a nurse now for 35 years, etc. And you don't know what you did for my mother and for all of us. And what you did for my father. He's now been a normal guy. He was not mean or cruel when he wasn't drinking." That, I think, has given me as much pleasure as anything I've ever done. You just save one family. That was something.
I also hear that you had rubbed elbows or something with Sakharov, Andrei Sakharov.
Oh, yeah. Well,
tell me a little bit about that.
I had admired Sakharov for a long time. Dr. Sakharov was a leading Russian scientist, a member of the Academy, which is almost essential in Russia for scientists. And he was one of the top people there. And he had designed the atomic bomb, and I think he was on the hydrogen bomb at the time. He'd already done that for the Russians. And he came to the conclusion this was a horrible, inhumane thing to be doing with his life. And he switched completely, and he proposed to Khrushchev that they abandon the efforts for the hydrogen bomb and that they destroy the atomic bomb. Well, Khrushchev became livid with rage, and so did all the loyal communists. and he became a persona non grata. And he was thrown out of the Academy of Sciences. He was fired from whatever he was doing. Bear in mind, he was the top of Russian society. I mean, he had a dacha, they had cars and chauffeurs, had lovely living quarters, everything else. And he threw them all away. And he campaigned in Russia for the end of the atomic bomb. And he was being thrown in jail, and friends and cohorts were being thrown in jail. He kept it up. And the International League made an award to him in 1972 or 30 or something around that period. And I was going to Russia. So I was asked to take this award to present to him. I went there, and someone made a contact for me with Sakharov. And I called him and went up and visited him. He didn't speak English, and I didn't speak Russian, but he spoke German, and I spoke a little Yiddish. Besides that, I at that time read every book he'd written, everything he'd written in English, or had been translated in English. So I knew a lot about him and his feelings and what he would think and so forth. And we managed to communicate for about 2 hours together. It was unbelievable. First thing he pointed to me that up above and was saying the KGB were upstairs and everything we said was being heard by them, probably recorded. He also told me that when I leave, most likely there was like a panel truck out in front, and that was their downstairs listening post, and they would probably take me into custody as I was leaving. And he wanted to come down with me, and I wouldn't let him because he had a bad cold and it was pouring. It was miserable out. And in any event, that's what established my relationship. It was that time. Every time I came back again to Russia, I would visit. I'd bring things with me. As a matter of fact, on one occasion when he was in Gorky, if you remember that, his wife came up from Gorky to Moscow to meet with me. Her daughter, who lives up outside of Boston, I had been in touch with her down through the years. So she had asked me, would I take some medication over there for them? I said, sure. I didn't know what they were going to be bringing me. So one day she shows up with a couple of jars, 2 or 3 jars of pills in about, I'd say, half-gallon bottles. And I said, oh my God, how am I going to walk in with that? Because they were already alerted to me, and I was always under KGB watch. But what I did was, Libby was with me, and I went to a druggist here in town. I had all these things put in different color, smaller bottles, and put labels on of various medical labels, had nothing to do with whatever it was. So I had this stuck around in our luggage, and I also had a great big coat. That was a little bit silly because they could easily feel this in there, but the fact was they didn't. And I came in with this load of medications for her. And I had her speak here one time, his wife, and the first time he came to the United States, he spoke for the International League for Human Rights because we had been the ones who kept in contact with him all the years. And as a matter of fact, he had said for many years that the reason he wasn't put in jail much earlier was the fact that we used to call him on the telephone frequently. I couldn't speak to him, but others did. Mm-hmm. But we would call him on the telephone. And knowing the International League for Human Rights